I believe that the traditions of bow making, call them maybe the tried and true methods that have been passed down by wisdom keepers for all of our history. Those are there for a reason, and those are important. Your easiest to construct, most durable, most efficient uses of materials are going to come from those traditional tried and true designs. To give you an example, one would be like the Neolithic longbow, which is a design that took us all the way through the medieval times. The Welsh and English longbows were designed much the same as ancient Neolithic longbows, and they're still in use today with not only the English war bows, but what's known as like a Victorian English longbow. The very long, very narrow, rounded bows have been around for a very long time. And another great example is the traditional flat bow that you see in almost all of the online tutorials. The one that has roughly 2-inch wide limbs, it's mid-60s in length, it has a stiff handle and 2 individually working limbs. That is a very, very old design. And the oldest complete bow artifact that we have is very much akin to, say, the pyramid bow that you see in all the online tutorials today. So the tradition has deep roots and a strong foundation, and you can always fall back on those to get you a no frills, excellent shooting, durable weapon. But there's definitely a soft spot in my heart for experimentation. I am big on experimentation. I'm always doing R&D with random designs or weird looking historical artifacts. The Native Americans especially had bows that varied so wildly from region to region. Every size and shape and length that you could possibly think of had been done by someone. So it's fun for me to experiment and try out all these different Native American artifacts of all different lengths and widths, just to see, how do they stack up against some of the tried and true designs? How do they stack up in terms of ease of production and reliability? So yeah, I really encourage you to experiment and try new bow designs. And I think that's a great way to improve your skills as a bowyer. And just know that you've always got those ancient trusted designs to fall back on. If I could only pass on one piece of advice to the next generation of bow makers, it would be hang in there. It's got a steep learning curve, and you're gonna break bows. If you're coming into this thinking that your very first bow is just gonna be a banger, you're gonna be disappointed. So hang in there. It's gonna be a struggle, but it's gonna be worth it. And one day, it's just gonna click. And once it clicks and you have a really good grasp of the process, it's pretty much smooth sailing from there, and it becomes a lot more fun because you've worked out the kinks and now you're just having fun experimenting, building all kinds of bows for your friends and family. But if you can't get past the drudgery of the early days, you'll never experience the pure joy that comes from the art of bow making. Most bowyers would consider it sacrilegious that I live in the Osage belt, and that Osage is actually not my #1 wood. Osage orange or hedge apple, bodark, goes by many different names, but it's the king of bow woods. It's extremely dense, very elastic, it's got great tension and compression properties, and it's very durable and resistant to rot and moisture. So it is a very well-rounded bow wood, but it grows extremely crooked and gnarly and filled with knots. And I've been doing this for almost 15 years. And I've probably found one Osage tree in my entire life that was suitable to snap a chalk line on for my profile. And by that, I just mean straight enough that I don't have to jump through hoops to lay out the bow. But my favorite bow wood is probably hackberry. It is easily accessible. It's semi-invasive, so people around here are more than willing to allow you to take a few off their property. It has no lumber value, so it's accessible, and if it doesn't have a market value, then people have no use for it. And it grows extremely straight and extremely clean. And it makes a very durable, fast shooting bow because it's a little bit on the lighter side of the bow wood spectrum as far as mass is concerned. So it's just a great backyard bow wood that I have access to, and that's very easy to work with. And in fact, hackberry is what we teach our introductory course, our bow making 101 workshop on. And we've had over 100 students come through here just to make hackberry bows alone. The most common mistake a beginner is going to make when they're harvesting bow wood is assuming that any old stick will make a bow. And I see it on the online forums all the time. People will just post up the gnarliest, knotted, twisted, crooked branch that they can find in their yard and ask if it'll make a bow. I think it will serve you well to spend the time walking around. 1 in 1,000 trees is just perfect for a bow, but look for that 1 in 1,000 tree that's going to be perfectly straight and free of obstacles. And I think as a beginner, that's going to give you a much higher success rate. A professional bowyer or someone who's proficient in bow making, who has a really good understanding of the tillering process or the art of bending wood, can pretty much make a bow out of any old stick. But as a novice, it's going to increase your difficulty and your learning curve exponentially. The number one mental and emotional trait of a good bowyer is patience. Hands down. Everything is about patience from the time that tree hits the ground to the time that it is a finished and functional bow. You've got sometimes 1 to 2 years just to let the bow wood dry. And then you've got, all of the effort, sometimes multiple days that goes into reducing it down with hand tools, then multiple days still of the tillering process, which could best be described as scrape, check, scrape, check, scrape, check for hours and hours and sometimes even days, especially when you're first learning. And the second thing I wish I could claim as my own, but it's a quote from the late Ed Scott, who was a well-respected bowyer who recently passed. And he said that he could teach anyone how to make a bow, but a bowyer has to have a good natural sense of ratio and proportion. You have to know what's right. You have to be able to see those proportions and where things are out of balance and adjust them accordingly. So I think a good natural sense of ratio and proportion, like Ed Scott said, is a bonus trait. The closest call I have ever had when cutting bow wood was several winters ago. I brought my entire family out. My brother was visiting from out of state and he had his whole family with him. And so we piled up in the truck and the whole family went out to cut this large Osage tree that I had my eyes on. And they were all gonna help me split it and transport it and just make the day easier. And I was actually being filmed when we cut the tree and everything went perfect. Beautiful notch with a nice back cut and a really strong hinge, and the tree went right where I had planned. There was a big risk of it getting hung up in the canopy because it was a very tall Osage that had branched out a lot, but it was falling right where I wanted to, and I didn't even notice, but in the film, they had captured a large widowmaker, probably about as big around as my thigh, that had swung down from the canopy. It had broken off from a separate tree and it swung down like a guillotine out of the canopy and went right past my neck and missed killing me by probably 1 or 2 inches. And they got the whole thing on film and I just carried on about my day, no helmet or anything. I was not wearing proper PPE because it was just a quick trip. And when I saw how close I was on film to being killed in front of my whole family, I started taking PPE very seriously, and I bought myself a proper forestry helmet, and yeah, I wear everything that I need to stay safe out there, and I'm much more aware of widowmakers. If I could recommend one specialty tool, it would be a really high quality draw knife. There are many draw knife options out there. I've experimented with most of them, and a lot of them are pretty worthless. Just poor quality steel, won't hold an edge, and so forth. So if you're going to invest in a single high quality tool, I would say that should be like a custom-made draw knife by a reputable maker, because that's going to be sort of your MVP in the bow making process. If I had to choose a close second, it would be a high quality carving axe, because a lot of what you can do with a draw knife can also be done with a high quality carving axe.